Hello, everyone. Hello. Hello, everyone. Hi. Good evening, everyone. We would like to welcome you to Palestine Book Awards 13th year for the shortlisted authors night. We have a special evening tonight with majority of the authors that could actually make it today. Hosting today's event will be our lovely Victoria.
Thank you, Aisha. Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for coming. We thought we'd like to start this evening with a 1-minute silence. People can say the Fatiha or their other prayers. Within the context that we're living, I think it's hard to start without starting like that. So would you join us in standing up? Jihan, there's seats in the front here. Just up there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I want to start now with a few more thank yous. A thank you to the ultra efficient organizer, Aisha, who has managed to get us all here and has managed to bring us all the authors but one. I'll come back to that. A big thank you to P21, who have been the home from home for all of us from PBA right from the start. Yeah. We're really grateful. Thank you so much. And then I want to thank, we've got a translator translating from Spanish. Thank you very much, Anushka, who volunteered to come. And if there are any publishers in the room, the biggest thank you to you for the risks you take and the way you support the authors by doing all the books, so many more than when we started 13 years ago. If there aren't any publishers, you thank them all on behalf of us. So, I'm going to start, unfortunately, with the author who's not here. And she's not here because she never got a visa. And these days, when the visas are not provided by the Foreign Office, where you can ring up and ask about them, but by a company, there's no way of managing it. Not only is that very unfortunate, but this is Khadija, who I'm going to talk about, but her publisher in New York was unable to get it together to give us her books to sell. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about her and the questions that I was going to ask her, because this book is so important. I want everybody to take it in and to ask their local library for a copy, and if they're academics, get it in your library. So the book is called Nights of Cinema, and the author is Khadija Habashne. Now, for some people in this room, she's an iconic name, an iconic resistance person, Palestinian, from the 1970s. And the book that I would have wanted to talk about is a completely magic and astonishing piece of work. It's a book that's a half a century of work, and it tells the inside story of how between 1968 and 1982, a handful of people, which includes Khadija, created the Palestine Film Unit. And the Palestine Film Unit, which started in Jordan and was then in Beirut, became the artistic tool which fixed the image of Palestinian struggle, both for Palestinians themselves in the camps, but also in the wider world. And the book feels as though it's co-written with Khadija's husband, her late husband, who was called Mustafa Abu Ali, another, obviously, a completely iconic name. And so much of his writing is in the book. And in the years since he died, in 2014 up to 2018, Khadija was interviewing people who had worked with him and knew him from that period all over the world. And he was the best known key figure, which in the 1970s made Palestinian film on a level with the great filmmakers, radical filmmakers of the time in Cuba, Algeria, Argentina, and in Africa, Sembeni Usman. And in Europe, thank goodness we have two Europeans, Costa Gavras in Greece and Jean-Luc Godard in France. And I wanted to ask her, what was the special ingredient? Anyway, you won't get that answer until you buy the book. My second question was, I want to say about her that she was in charge of restructuring the Palestinian Women's Union in camps in the Lebanon at this period. She was a psychologist. She was also working as a psychologist in all the camps. She was also bringing up two children. She was also accompanying foreign filmmakers, translating, doing things like going out to buy the blackout material in order to make the darkroom darker. So I wanted her best memories, again, in her own book. And my last question to her was about 1982, when Israel first besieged and bombed and then entered Beirut. The Palestine Film Unit, their archive was stolen in the course of that period. Much of it was taken out, films were taken out in people's pockets, and the French embassy was for a time the home of the archive. But within the book, she talks, of course, about the moment in 2017, sorry, I'm in the last century, when an Israeli archivist and researcher, Rana Saleh, she wrote about finding a lot of the archive within a closed part of the Israeli military library. And the most tantalizing piece of the book is when Khadija seems to indicate that she thinks that the whole archive may not have been completely lost. So I'm sorry that bit is not in the book, but it's a great read, and I really urge you to find it, to order it, and not be put off by, in this case, hopeless publishers. So, from that, I want to move on to our wonderful authors who are all with us. And so I'm going to sit down now. Nobody's going to stand there. Sorry about anyone who wanted to drink water.
It's good luck. We think it's good luck. It is good luck.
Oh, is it good luck?
Yes.
Good. We need it. So this is Atak Ashar, who's at the University of Westminster, and he teaches Arabic culture and Arabic language. And he is the editor of this lovely book, Out of Gaza, which is a book of poetry. And we thought that we would start it by him reading one very short poem, because its writer, Hiba, Abu Ghada was killed in an Israeli airstrike in October 2023. She was 23 years old, and I think it's 32 years old, sorry. I think it's right that we should start with that voice. Thank you. Oh, there's a mic.
So this is Hiba Abu Nada's poem, published shortly before her death. It was published on Twitter, and I had the honor of translating it. We are in the heights now, teachers free of their crowded classrooms, their voices no longer shouting to be heard, new families without pain or sadness, journalists taking pictures of heaven, writing about the eternal love. All of them are from Gaza. There is a new Gaza in heaven without siege taking shape now.
Thank you so much. So, I want to ask you how he has a co-editor, and I want to know how you put the book together. Did you go after people because you saw them on Twitter? Did people come to you? How did you do it?
It was actually Alan Morrison, my co-author, who initiated the idea. He saw that I had a book before called The Map of Absence on Palestinian Poetry and Literature. And I thought that it was urgent to do it because of what was happening in Gaza. And I saw Hiba Abu Nada's poem and Rifat al-Ara'ir and other poems. And I thought we must do this, so to house them in a book somehow. And we just started from there. So I've translated a few poems, including Hiba's poem. And it was really a very good collaboration.
And did people come to you because they knew you were doing it? Or did you get in touch with people who you knew were writing poetry?
We got in touch with some people, and some of the poems were already out there, so we just gathered them and asked them for permission. Yeah.
And how was it finding a publisher?
Actually, the publisher was very interested in the book, and he was actually very quick in terms of production and in terms of working with us. So that wasn't a problem. The publisher was very keen. Smokestack is very keen to publish Palestinian poetry, sort of, minority poetry, which is called the publishing house was to publish minority poets and from minority background. So that wasn't a problem. He started the idea, and we just were very excited to do it with him.
So now we're on to the third author, who is the author of this highly recommended children, grandchildren, and you're going to love it yourself. So our author is Amanda Najib. Could you stand up, please, so everybody can see you and we can talk about it. So the title of the book is Lana Makes Purple Pizza. So the illustrations are by Lauren Bassi, who unfortunately isn't with us. But Amanda, I believe this is Lana. Am I right?
Yes.
So tell us about it.
Yeah. That is in fact Lana, my daughter. The book was bred out of a few intersections of my identity, one being a mother. And when you go through the book, you see Lana and her mom making msakhan, Palestine's national dish, together. And really, as a mother, I saw this as a way to show how mothers love and protect culture and identity and history. I'm also an organizer, and I saw this as an urgency behind resisting, and how children are at the root of how we resist attempts to erase us. And as an educator, I saw this as truly a transformative, the power of stories are so transformative for children. And I don't shy away from very difficult conversations in this book. We talk about the Nakba, we talk about Palestinian dispossession, we talk about the theft of our culture, all within a children's book in a way that children are able to read and understand and really start asking critical questions.
Just tell us a little bit about Lauren and how you conceived the pictures together.
Yes. So Lauren's actually the first person I ever co-taught with. We taught a 4 or 5 classroom in New York City that serviced the projects, and we really became the best of friends. And I say that Lauren is an incredible illustrator, an incredible teacher. She's also just an incredible person, and her biggest feat is understanding my mind, which tends to be very jumbled and crazy, and I have no artistic ability, but I still drew out a lot of the pages, and for her to bring this vision to life was just so special.
Okay, so this is my question to you. Are you planning to diffuse it in schools or in communities? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the book has had an overwhelming response from teachers, educators, community activists. In all honesty, I took very special care as a former elementary school teacher myself to make sure I embedded things that teachers really need. So we do turn-in talks where we ask the kids to turn to each other and talk about a part of the book, and I really thought about where I could enhance even like small vocabulary words that teachers could embed. So it's very much written to be disseminated in schools, and we all know the censorship around Palestine and how schools are trying to, unfortunately, be apolitical, and that is in the form of trying to hide our culture and our history and the truth behind the reality of genocide and what has happened to us. And while my goal is to get it in schools, some schools are very receptive to it, while other schools have been very nervous. My daughter's school has in fact brought this into their classrooms and their libraries and have read it in the classrooms.
Wonderful, congratulations. So the next book, I'm going to hold it, but I'll just show it to you here. And we've got both authors here, Teresa and Sandra, and I'm going to give you the mic, because I've got a loud voice. So I think you better stand up. So
Yes,
I just want to give you a flavour by...
Podemos explicar un poco, ¿no?
Sí, Against Erasure
Es
is photography memory of Palestine before the Nakba.
So
de la fotografía.
Photographic memories.
I wanted to ask you, can you hear okay at the back?
Bueno,
You can hear. Okay, brilliant, thank you. I wanted to ask you, first of all, what was the seed of this very unusual book? And how did you gather all these families to want to share such intimate pictures and stories with you? And did I say they're Spanish, by the way? So it's very unusual, and I think a very, very important memory.
Sí. El libro.
So the book,
Okay,
this book in particular, yeah.
La idea de este libro surge en una cena de amigos, todos relacionados con Palestina.
Okay, so the origin of the book, it happened in a dinner party with people who are all related to Palestine. Oh, right, that's true.
Sí. Ahí surge la idea de qué importante sería tener un libro con las imágenes, las fotografías de los álbumes familiares de familias palestinas antes de que fuera destruida esa sociedad, mostrar esa sociedad.
Right, so that they thought it was really important to show the images, the family photographs, the albums of daily life of a society before it was destroyed.
Esta idea la dije yo, pero Sandra, que es fotógrafa, se quedó con ella y a las 2 semanas me llamó diciéndome, a través de una amiga palestina de Madrid, se puso en contacto con un historiador palestino de Haifa.
Okay. Yeah, no. So it was her idea, but Sandra picked it up, and in 2 weeks she called her back. Sandra called Teresa back, and she had gotten in touch with a Palestinian historian in Haifa. Sí.
Entonces, el profesor Johnny Mansour de Haifa, durante décadas, ha estado recolectando fotografías de álbumes familiares palestinos.
Oh, so Johnny Mansour. Johnny Mansour is the name of this historian. He's a professor, and he has been collecting family photographs. Oh, sorry. He has been collecting for decades these photographs of family portraits and
oral testimonies.
And oral testimonies, yeah.
Entonces le escribí comentando el proyecto y le pareció fantástica la idea y envió una primera fotografía maravillosa de mujeres palestinas.
Okay, so she wrote to him, and he was very enthusiastic. Sí, estaba enthusiastic. He thought it was a great idea, and he just sent them one first photograph of Palestinian women.
Yes.
That photograph is the cover of the Spanish edition of this book.
But it's not that one.
It's not that one.
It's a cover of the Spanish edition of the book.
Y viajamos
Okay, so then they traveled to Haifa, and they started to dig into the...
las familias palestinas que iban sabiendo que estábamos haciendo ese trabajo, nos iban trayendo sus fotografías de álbumes familiares.
O sea, ellas solas.
Año 42.
All right.
42 tienen.
Estas son mujeres.
For the year 42.
These are women from...
Mujeres del Departamento de Aduanas de Haifa en 1942.
Uy.
Cristianas, musulmanas y judías trabajando todas juntas.
So they... Del Departamento de Aduanas. So this is the Aduanas... exactly, the custom department, and they're Christian Muslim women. Yeah.
Christian, Muslim and Jewish.
And Jewish, yeah.
All together working.
They all worked together, yeah. So they were Muslim, Christian, and Jewish women working together. Yeah. But also before that, she said that when they were visiting Johnny Mansour, that families around Haifa, they knew about them, so they started to bring the photos to them. Yeah.
It was beautiful work.
I've got one more question. How did you think of and persuade, if it had to be persuaded, the introduction by Mohammed El-Kurd, who is a very, as I'm sure everybody in this room knows,
It's a honor.
the
It's a honor
complete
for us.
hero of Sheikh Jarrah when he was
But,
second.
yeah, but it's not our idea. It is
High market
we
idea.
have high market people, and it was the idea from high market. It's a honor. Yeah, yes, it's a honor. It's a honor for us. It was wonderful idea.
And in the Spanish edition, no está eso?
No,
Oh,
there
okay.
is in the Spanish edition there is a Spanish, very important Spanish professor of Arab.
The best Arabist in Europe, probably. Pedro Martínez Montávez.
Yeah.
Great. He died 2 years ago.
Is it included in the English?
Is it included in the English?
Included.
Yeah, it is included.
It's a marvelous introduction.
Okay.
Estamos ocupando todo. Uy, por Dios, ya, ya.
I just want to say that the production of the book is outstandingly beautiful and generous. And I thought, how amazing that it's come from a very mainstream publisher. So huge congratulations. And everybody, if you look at the book outside, you'll see. Also, I believe they gave us a very good price tonight. Am I right? Aisha? Is that right? Yes. Yeah, okay. So this is your opportunity, friends. Okay, thank you so much. Dima, it's your moment. So I want to show you this book. It's a show and tell, isn't it? And I'm going to give you an idea of what it's like by just holding it up a minute. And Dima El-Anami, who is the second self-publisher, we've never had a self-published book before, and this year we've got two. Yay. And I think it's high five. Yes. I think you need to stand up.
Okay. Yalla.
So, can you just tell us about how this book has 48, as you can see, it's called 48 stories, and it's got 60 volunteer contributors. That is the writers, the painters, the copy editors, all of that, how did you put this team together?
So first of all, thank you for having me. Hi everyone, ahla wa sahla. So the book is called 48 Stories of Exile from Palestine, and actually 80 people contributed to this book. And every single person who worked on it pro bono, including myself. And we actually managed to finish it in 4 months, which was incredible. If you work in publishing, you'd know it's quite insane to do that. But I was determined to work only with people who understand the bigger picture and bigger cause for this book, because the idea was to gift the book to a Palestinian charity. And we actually gifted the first edition 5,000 copies to the PCRF, the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund, and 100% of the proceeds, not the profit, the proceeds go straight to PCRF to support amputated and orphan children in Gaza. So alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So far, we've collected over almost $180,000, which is amazing. Alhamdulillah, and we sold like thousands of copies. So thank you so much for shortlisting it. So it started off with actually a video of Hajj Hadia. Does anyone remember Hajj Hadia by any chance? So there's a journalist in Gaza called Saleh Jafarawi, and he was taking a video in one of the hospitals, and there was a really old lady, her name is Hajj Hadia, injured in the hospital. And that was in October. I was completely depressed, depleted, angry, honestly, like I was paralyzed, couldn't do anything. And I saw her picture, I saw her video. She was laughing, she was engaging with Saleh, she was full of life, full of love. And I'm like, hold on a second. Like, she is this old lady who has been exiled, and her house was probably bombed, but she's full of life. And I'm like, I'm sitting here in my privilege, doing nothing. So I decided to look at what I love, because she was full of love, and I love storytelling. So I'm like, I'm going to do something with it. And then I noticed something else, is that she took 2 things with her from when she was injured. Can anyone guess what these 2 things were? Sorry? Key. She didn't have her keys, but a photo. She took a photo of the mud oven that she used to bake in for the past 50 years. And another thing. No, her ID. She took her ID, and then Saleh, the reporter, is like, wait, you're born in 1944 in Tul Karim, before the occupation state. And she couldn't hear him. She's like, what? He's like, you were born before the occupation state. And she's like, yes, of course, and I will stay here, and I will die here, and blah, 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 etc. So I'm like, wait, she was born before Al-Nakba, and she looked quite old. And I'm like, if this lady passes, like her story is gonna pass away with her. So that's the moment where I'm like, I need to write a story to document these stories. And unfortunately, she was assassinated 2 weeks later while drinking tea in front of her home. You know, as an old lady, she had her own habits. And so if you actually look at the page, I dedicated the book. I posted on Instagram and reached out to her family to get permission to dedicate the book to her. And now, alhamdulillah, everyone has Hajj Hadia in their homes, which is her. It was illustrated by an incredible illustrator, Lebanese, called Maya Fidawi. And on that point, we had over 80 actually contributing illustrators, contributing authors, editors, proofreaders, and from 16 different ethnicities, not only Palestinian. Yes, thank you.
I know there are going to be so many questions after, so I'm not going to ask too many more questions, but I'm going to go to the next speaker, who has the most wonderful title, Elastic Empire. And this is Lisa. Could you stand up, please?
Yeah. So I'm trying to get away with it, but...
No chance.
Okay.
So, this is extremely... Are you okay hearing at the back? Yeah? This is an extremely deeply researched book over quite a long period. So my first question was, could you tell us something about the journey that you went on, which was obviously a journey of learning that was like steep, and at the same time she was going through that journey, the things were changing in the West Bank in particular, in the way that the Elastic Empire was bringing out more and more of what she calls not just the squeeze on Palestinian life, but her phrase is the asphyxiatory violence, which I think is really a concept that many of you will know, but you've written about it with a clarity I've never seen. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. And also, thank you all for being here. I'm really delighted to be here this evening with you all. So, yes, this book is the product of a very long journey. It's an academic book. It started off, 2009, 2010. And I had a different project in mind. I was going to be looking at UNRWA and looking at kind of the management of displacement, protracted. And I ended up, had this interview with this person in Nablus, Palestine, West Bank, thinking he was an UNRWA teacher. And he told me, well, no, I don't work there anymore. I was like, well, what are you doing now? And he said, well, I work for this USAID project, and it's good, it pays well, but we have to sign this paper. I was like, what's this paper? And he said, to say we're not terrorists. And I was like, okay, well, what is this? And ended up following it up. And in short, it's connected to a law, executive order, and a body of law that the US has on the books that effectively bundles to humanitarian and development aid. And it basically kind of transports the US kind of counterterrorism, quote unquote, regime into the aid networks on which Palestinians are reliant. And so I thought this is the story. We often know, and we should, about the military dimensions of U.S. empire, about the ways that it blocks, it sits in the Security Council and vetoes, right? A number of cases. We know these sorts of stories, but there's another story that is also important. And I wanted to tell that story, and indeed, it shifted over time. The arc of the book is, again, over a decade. My last trip back was 2021. Right after Israel had designated 6 Palestinian human rights organizations as terrorist organizations. And this is part of that story. The United States kind of started building this infrastructure in the early aughts. And it now has effectively kind of proliferated throughout all donor streams in Palestine. And we're seeing the implications of that with UNRWA most recently. the designation, just the mere allegation of a terrorist organization effectively sort of, and that's where I get to asphyxiatory violence, it effectively kind of creates a kind of a blacklisting policy practice, right, where people are both nervous to engage with the targeted organization, but also it stymies financial and aid flows. And so I sort of think about this in the ways that, what I'm calling, empire or kind of, modern day war is enacted not only through a tank or a bomb, but also through the tethering of this kind of counterterrorism law to aid networks and kind of squeezing and asphyxiating those entities that are targeted. And so I could talk more about asphyxiatory violence, but I know maybe I'm over my time, so.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure a lot of people will have questions for you. So again, let's
Yeah.
So this is our last book, our last author. And Hazem Jamjoon works in the British Library, and he's a translator and an audio archivist. Correct? Yes. And if Khadija had been here, the arc of the evening was intended to go from Palestinians in Lebanon to Lebanon. And his book is lurking under here, is by the great Hassan Kanafani.
Yay!
As you all know, he was assassinated in 1972 with a car bomb in the car with his teenage niece, Lamis. And I wanted to start by asking you, what gave you the idea of translating this particular book of his?
Well, I want to translate all of his work, but this was the first thing I'd ever read by him that wasn't a novella. And it affected me a lot. I think most of it's really a foundational moment was 16, 17 years ago, reading this text and beginning to really understand what this was all about. And then sort of fast forward to about 10, 11 years ago, I'm sitting on the terrace of Rosemary Sayed's house in Beirut, and Annie Kanafani comes over, and we talk about the politics of translation, his widow, and we talk about the existing translation of this text and how it deserved to be retranslated, which I never thought, was just kind of a pipe dream. And then 2 years ago, a publisher reached out to me and said, do you want to translate something from these? So Dar al-Rimal had put out a group of unpublished texts as a volume 5 of the complete works. So we've had a 4-volume complete works for many years from another publisher. Dar al-Rimal republished the 4 volumes and then published a 5th volume, which was his political analysis essays. And this is one of the main ones, although this had been published. And they said, do you want to pick something from this volume, and maybe we'll work over the years to translate the whole thing. And so we started with this one.
So the actual title of the book is The Revolution of 1936 to 39 in Palestine. I want to ask you whether, when you started working on it and as you worked through it, and as this year has unfolded, how did you feel about the parallels that, for me, were there?
Yeah, I mean, this book was published 2 months before the October 7th operation, the prison break out of the Gaza Strip. And so it was sort of, in print and on some shelves when there was a big thirst for understanding around Palestine. What I think a lot of people don't understand is that Palestinians have known that Zionism aims to eliminate us. We've been saying it, we've been writing about it. And Hassan Kanafani was one of the first to analyze it deeply in his analysis of Zionist literature, in his analysis of politics of his day, and then in this text. And so I think one of the really important things about this text is that he does, he sort of has this approach, which is that Zionists and imperialists are our enemy, and they want to eliminate us, and we know this. What I think is incredibly important about Kanafani is that he looks at the Palestinian reactionary leadership and Arab reactionary leadership as in line, as basically actually he opens the book with a line, which is that there's constellation of three enemies, three forces that work against the Palestinian people. And he starts with the reactionary Palestinian leadership. Second to them is the reactionary Arab regimes, which is all the Arab regimes. And third is the Zionist imperialists who already knew were the enemy. And I think that is where he still has a lot to teach us, because I think we still have people who go through this and talk about Palestine, and including Palestinians, by the way, who really just want to kind of focus on Zionism, Zionists, the State of Israel, US and European backing and whatnot. But before we start understanding how our own leaderships and the elites within our own societies, and by our own, I mean Palestinian society, but I also mean Arab society, and I also mean global society, that without understanding how we fit in this bigger picture, we will still think of Palestine as something that's over there, that maybe we're in solidarity with, rather than understanding, as Kanafani tried to teach us, and still teaches us, if we bother to reread him, that actually, wherever we are, the fight for Palestine exists. And I think that's one of the key points that I carry with me wherever I go to speak about this.
One of the things about this slim volume is the clarity with which everything's explained. And reading it, if I were 14, I would read it easily. And I think that it's a very sort of special thing about him. And I always think about his novellas, which now become films and plays. Men in the Sun, now mysteriously called Les Dupes en français, as film. And when those films and plays are shown, which they have been a bit here, it's always incredibly striking that the theme fits totally into everything that we know now. So I'm absolutely thrilled that you did this, and many congratulations.